You are listening to Proof Text, a Glossa House podcast exploring Scripture and all things related to it. New episodes are released daily. For more information, check out glossahouse.com and subscribe to our channels on Spotify and YouTube. Welcome and enjoy.
Welcome to the Christ and Classics podcast, where we do? We discuss classics in light of Jesus the Christ. And today we have the distinct privilege of talking with an old friend about not really old books.
Not be all else to me.
The author's no longer alive. We continue our series this month or so in C.S. Lewis, and we've got Keith Kresge with us. Colton, who is this guy?
Well, Keith Kresge. I don't know if you met Keith back in your glory days at Capitol Hill Baptist Church in Washington, D.C. Did y'all cross paths at Capitol Hill with Dever?
We were like ships in the night.
Y'all both did the internship there, but
no,
we all three met at seminary up in Minneapolis, and quickly grew to be close friends. You and Devin, you and Keith were a little bit closer. You guys were in a small group together for 2-3 years. Is that correct? Is that right, Keith?
Not long enough.
Yeah, that's about 2-3 years.
Yeah, so met in seminary, lots of discussions in seminary, lots of times playing ping pong in seminary. And Keith Kresge is the guy. He and another one of our good friends in our cohort, I consider probably two of the sharpest guys in the bunch. Who, whenever they speak, you just listen and just allow them to just sharpen you. And that's, I think I'm really excited to have you on, Keith, and really, recording or not, we get to just discuss some pretty important matters with Lewis today, and I'm excited just about that as well. So Keith, tell us about where you're at now. Who are you? Where are you at? What's your background with Lewis to start us off?
Okay, I am Keith Kresge, and right now I'm living in Michigan on the farm I grew up on. I am recently exiting farming. I was doing crop farming, and before that, dairy with my dad and my brother. But now I'm moving out of farming, although I'm still a beekeeper and trying to pay the bills in the interim right now with bees. I got my bachelor's and my MDiv from Bethlehem College and Seminary with these guys. I'm not qualified for this discussion, but I was more
neither are we.
Come on in. Listen.
That's you too.
Yeah. Plus, you had my old colleague on with, Dr. Ward last time, so I figure it's, kind of the same
Yes.
general goal.
Taught him everything he knows.
Obviously.
So you went through a classical Christian curriculum in a homeschool environment. Is that correct?
No, I was homeschooled by my mom. She homeschooled all 8 of us. It wouldn't have been classic, would have been Christian by the nature of us being family. But classical education wouldn't have really reached our circles very much. This would have been sort of a garden variety homeschool education that had its strengths and weaknesses that, of course, are shaped formed in the shape of the parents who are running that education. So, did you read Lewis
before college?
And writing, that was a help to me in high school. We did co-ops and things, to supplement.
Nice. Did you read Lewis before coming to college?
Yeah, I would have read some of Lewis's Some of his essays, I would have read most of his fiction in high school. I don't know about the Space Trilogy before college. I think I would have. I remember reading The Great Divorce in the car on the way to co-op with my best friend on the in junior and senior year. But definitely did the laps through the Chronicles, and I'm not sure how far I got in high school in Lewis. Besides, probably some essays here and there.
I think that's respectable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't read anything of Lewis until I was in college, sophomore year. I think I read half of Mere Christianity, and that's all.
Yeah, I noticed you did Dr. Ward that you were reading the Narnia Chronicles in anticipation of his guest.
That's not entirely true.
I felt that was playing him a little bit dirty. I felt he deserved to know that you were.
That wasn't entirely true. That's not entirely true.
Almost the maiden voyage of Holden because he landed Michael Ward. I really think
Yeah, that's good. Oh man.
Gosh. Okay. Where to now? Okay, so Keith, other than the fact that we just enjoy talking with you, I think you and Devin are the two guys that I text most frequently from the cohort. I enjoyed talking with you guys, but you've just finished reading listening to all of Lewis's essays and letters. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. We're going to go here. Right here. So it's not in print. About $150 can get you your own copy. I got mine for real cheap. I hawked used books for a while until I found it. But right here, C.S. Lewis essay collection and other short pieces. I think it is the exhaustive anthology of everything he wrote that was not full length. So there's even like The Dark Tower at the end, some other fictional essays that he wrote. One of the most memorable pieces, Guardian Angels, or Ministering Angels, essay 132. You should read that sometime. Ministering Angels, that'll stick with you. And this is a very expensive anthology that gives you all of his essays, but you can get it for like $14 on Audible. And it's read by Simon Vance. It's read excellently. And so when I say I worked through all of his essays, all I did was I just listened to it a little bit every day.
While you were feeding the cows and keeping the bees and fixing fence.
We don't fix fence.
Oh. You don't have fence in Michigan?
No, we don't graze. Not enough land here.
Well,
the shape is too nice.
Well, we asked Keith if he would pick out a couple of shorter essays that particularly grabbed his attention, just so that we could make it the centerpiece of our discussion. And Keith chose a short essay, really short essay, I think it's like 3 or 4 pages, called Democratic Education. But he also chose the short monologue that you'll find at the back of the Screwtape letters. Screwtape proposes a toast, and there it is, right there. You can find it on. You can find both of these online for free, and in various places. 2 great little pieces. And so, Keith, just to kick us off, tell us, why did you choose these 2?
Well, you asked me my favorite, and in the conversation that came up, I said, I don't know what my favorite is, but why are you asking? And he said, well, I want to talk with you about it on our podcast. That's a little bit of a different criteria. And so I tried to think about something that would generally pertain to the project of your podcast. I've been loosely following, hitting the highlights, you might say, as you guys.
You're one of our fans.
I am one of your fans.
Is a fanboy.
He's the fan.
honestly don't know if I'm one of your subscribers. I probably are.
He's like the guy who likes and follows and subscribes to everything.
If Colton sends me the link, I may listen.
Perfect.
Some of the ones that stuck out to me were democratic education, which was new to me going through this, and a sort of inverted, fictionalized version of it that's a bit longer and I think actually better, but takes a little bit more thought. First, the demonic inversion of everything with Screwtape. Screwtape's Screwtape likes it, you can't like it, and you got to figure out what he's saying. What Lewis behind Screwtape thinks there's some, ventriloquism going on. But I thought that this is really pertinent to our time, so worthwhile talking about. I thought it was really pertinent to Colton as an educator, and Devin, who certainly someday will become an educator again. Although,
no. He's a veteran who's retired for a time, but he's just waiting to hop back on the pony.
Yeah, it's just a hiatus. He'll be back.
We'll see. So why is it pertinent to the times? I enjoyed the reading. Why did you find it especially pertinent?
Well, I think Lewis is interested in heading off a sort of institutionalized envy that has become a hallmark of our culture. And his, at the time, it's clear he considers it a hallmark of American culture in Screwtape Proposes the Toast, although he doesn't say anything about that in democratic education. And, of course, since he published it in 1944, things have gotten much worse in this regard. But I just think we all have egalitarian sensibilities in terms of truth, goodness, and beauty of people and of individuals. And so we tend to have an allergy against establishing sort of a hierarchy of goodness or a hierarchy of intellect or a hierarchy of beauty among people. And because the allergy is so strong, can really affect the way we educate. And that's Lewis's particular concern in this essay. And I think it's one that it takes some thinking to figure out how we're going to immunize ourselves against that impulse and that sensibility. Even as a parent, you're a parent, you got 4 kids. They're not all gifted the same, right? They're not all born with the same, the same intellect. They're not all born with the same gifts of beauty or strength or speed or stature. And so not making apology for that, not pretending as if they're ciphers for one another is a challenge that I don't have all the answers to figuring out how to do that well as a dad, but I think in the classroom it's a particular danger. Even in a Christian classical setting, I think it's ubiquitous.
Yeah, he seems to differentiate between quote unquote democratic education and then education that preserves democracy, which doesn't seem on the surface democratic. I thought that was, it takes some thought because he calls it aristocratic education or something to that effect. The aristocratic education preserves democracy. Democratic education doesn't. Can you unpack? I mean, you didn't write it, but you like it and you requested it. I'm wondering how you see that working out.
Well, both those kinds of democracies are the senses of that word in both essays. I think he speaks of democracy proper as just a sort of it's a form of government, and one that in another essay on equality, he explains why he prescribes to democracy as a legitimate, maybe the best form of government, because it spreads authority thin and people aren't to be trusted. But even in that essay on equality, he says, I don't have near the qualifications to be running a civilization, and nor do most of the people who are in that state. And so Lewis is a real curmudgeon in this way. He hasn't been canceled the way he deserves to be, given how much of a hierarchicalist Lewis is. He's, he'll just say that, that's a stupid book and that's a clever book. And he has, and that's just living out my lives. I'm going to tell lies of these people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was part of an old England for him that he remembered and was part of and wanted to hold on to. And he started to see sort of modernism come in and flatten the expectation. And he puts his finger on the vice of envy as the major driving force. He calls it insatiable. And he says a democratic sense, an egalitarianism, is teasing envy cultural level.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to give envy whatever it demands. And the thing that envy demands is that nobody can ever be better than anyone else. As it develops into a hatred of any excellence whatsoever. I think that that's in a pretty advanced stage right now in the nation broadly. I mean, when you think about, there are places where math is being, labeled as racist in order to, prevent this sort of, somebody falling behind. Lest somebody fall behind, we'll give a narrative that explains why, he ought not ever feel a trauma of being at the bottom of the form or at the bottom of the class.
Yeah, I will say I was surprised at his argument here that at the bottom of this educational egalitarianism is envy. I hadn't thought of that. I thought from my perspective as an educator, it's like, well, education typically doesn't, quote, want those lower students to feel bad, but what's at the root of that feeling bad whenever you're at the bottom and there's people succeeding above you? Perhaps it is envy. I will say, Lewis does say that he says there are two sources to this democratic education. One is fair play, which I took to mean democratic education in a good sense, as opposed to unfair play, justice, right?
Yeah.
But then there's this wicked source, envy, and
a hatred of superiority. Sources.
And it seems a little bit like maybe in America anyhow that the good source kind of devolved into the bad source, because at one point you have education as a way up the ladder, and providing opportunity for more people than maybe civilizations before. But at some point along the way, it's become the hatred of superiority.
Yeah, I think I think it'd be a mistake to think that the attack on education is alone. I think the slide towards an egalitarian worldview that wants to say nobody's better in any way in any field is a larger thing. And I do think that former generations, I think probably with every generation you go back, you're going to see a rise in a sort of innate sense that I might be made lower in intellect, right? And that's a very possible reality. I'm listening to some older English mysteries right now. A big one by A.A. Milne called The Red House Mystery. The author of Winnie the Pooh wrote a murder mystery. Definitely check it out.
What happened to Eeyore?
Yeah, No, but not really. But it's sort of his homage to Sherlock Holmes.
Hmm.
And then I'm 40 hours into a complete compilation of Sherlock Holmes.
Wow.
And reading this essay again, I was struck by immediately the sense that older England, these short stories are full of admiration. People freely admire and defer and honor the giftings of Sherlock Holmes.
Mm-hmm.
Even Watson. Watson comes across sometimes as almost obsequious to us. Like I would never, yeah. It's almost uncomfortable. We don't like it. At least I don't. I have this sensibility that I don't like it. He's sort of pandering, or he's crawling. And everywhere you go, you just run into people who say things like, "I'm just a simple country person.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the way I see it, and you would know better than me, Mr. Holmes." That sort of comfortability with inferiority is something that I think is just gone. It just seems gone. Even in small circles, like if you get into a family circle, or if you get into a church circle, people are really reticent to talk very highly about another brother or sister who's like exceptional.
Mm-hmm.
Putting yourself underneath somebody freely is not something that's done naturally. And I think it's because we all have the sense that, I'm as good as you are. We all have this sort of innate desire to sort of maintain what we know to be false, is what Lewis says. He says, nobody who says I'm as good as you are actually thinks it. And if somebody is superior to another, it would never occur to him to say, I'm as good as you are.
And
because there's an innate sense of superiority there.
And in Lewis's mind, he has in view the superior student for this form of education. Let me just quote this. It's on page 599 of your copy, Keith, right at the top, that paragraph. He says, a truly democratic education, one which will preserve democracy. So Lewis is for democracy. He's for this education that will perpetuate democracy.
Which the democratic people will not like.
Right. Yeah. So a truly quote, a truly democratic education, one which will preserve democracy, must be in its own field ruthlessly aristocratic, shamelessly highbrow. In drawing up its curriculum, it should always have chiefly in view the interests of the boy who wants to know and who can know.
Mm-hmm.
He says, with very few exceptions, they are the same boy. The stupid boy nearly always is the boy who does not want to know. It must, I'll keep going, I'll just finish the paragraph. It must, in a certain sense, subordinate the interest of the many to those of the few, and it must subordinate the school to the university. Only thus can it be a nursery of those first-class intellects without which neither a democracy nor any other state can thrive. There's no education board today that's going to be preaching that from its pulpits to the mass public today.
So, it's interesting. What he's saying is the honorable source as a demand for equality. I think he is saying it's just and honorable to demand that even the unclever children get a chance at education in order that they become a better version of who they are, right?
Yeah.
This sort of, people talk about, you'll hear like Peterson talk about equality of opportunity. I think Lewis is saying here, that's an honorable thing. That's good. That's worthwhile. But previously, before democracies came up and the idea was we're going to educate all of the children, we wouldn't have ever had to remind ourselves to outfit our curriculum and aim it at the gifted boy who wants to learn. We would not have had to remind ourselves of that, because that's the only one who ever gets educated, right? It's like Moshe's child who taught himself Latin, and the country family realizes this kid is not going to milk cows again, right? Like, he is going somewhere, and we got to get him a tutor. We got to send him off, find a patron for him. That's the guy who gets educated. And now democracy is giving broadly to everyone the gift of education. But Lewis is saying here, we shouldn't think that because we're giving it to everyone, it's for everyone in the same way, right? It's like, we're going to make sure we don't miss those gifted ones, and we're going to do an honest attempt at offering it to everyone, right?
Yeah.
But it's not going to benefit everyone in the same way, and we ought not try to jimmy rig it in order to make it benefit everyone in the same way.
And the irony of it is, at least for the irony of our day and age, where hyper differentiated education to make it more so-called equal, the little Johnnies who don't want to know don't get educated anyways, and so we're lowering the standards for these little Johnnies, but they don't get educated anyways because they don't want to know for whatever reason there is.
Yeah, it's interesting that in the old system, when you only educated the precocious child who's very gifted, right, which means I wouldn't have gotten educated. I was way too, undisciplined. I was slothful as a young boy. Like, I had no desire for book learning. Right?
Says the guy who just said the word obsequious.
Praise God.
Miracles happen.
My train of thought was just thrown off.
You wouldn't have been educated as a child under the old way.
Yeah, in the old way, the people who didn't get an education would have probably had a sense of deficiency, a sense of inferiority naturally baked in, because they might not have even learned to read, right? If you go back far enough, they might not have even learned to read. But Lewis thinks that if you maintain brutally high standards that do leave behind, or at least leave at the bottom of the class, those students who are indolent or who are, unintelligent, or it's not really for them, you're going to teach them the same thing. You're going to raise their level insofar as they can benefit some. And they're going to be the masses of the democratic people who are invaluable in maintaining a democracy. And they're going to do a sense of their inadequacies. People misplaced into positions of authority or positions of influence because they think that they're worthy of those positions. I think we're starting to through policies that are placing people based on qualifications, their track record, their training, their proficiency. You start to see, even presidents of major Ivy League schools sort of revealed as they've faked it to get there. They don't actually belong where they're standing. And Lewis would say, I think he's saying that's a fruit. Being told you're as good as anyone, right? Whatever you want.
Yeah. I love that Lewis gets to that point where he says that the boy who's not clever becomes, or he himself will be a pillar of democracy.
Yeah.
And he actually will just allow the right amount of rope to the clever ones.
Yep.
And ultimately, it seemed like he's making a societal argument equivalent to what Paul makes in 1 Corinthians 12 in regards to the body and the different parts. And not every part has the same role, but they all, fit together for one purpose. And certainly the egalitarian impulses tries to flatten everyone to the same potentiality and has no sense of, or at least popularly has no sense of, hey, even though we're equal in dignity, that doesn't mean we have the same capacities for, you might be able to fix a car, I might be able to write a book, that guy might be able to build a rocket, this person might be able to stitch you up after you, bust your finger open or something. you know.
I think it's worthwhile to remember that Lewis is writing as an academia in this essay, and in Screwtape Lewe. He's worried about the in the fronts of truth, goodness, and beauty. I don't think he's trying to insult unduly different kinds of intelligences. Like, I have family and I have in-laws that I think genuinely brilliant and sharp.
Yeah.
They would qualify, I think, in Lewis's essay here, they would qualify as the child who isn't clever. Like, he isn't the one who's going to excel in the Latin. He's not going to do well in the academy. He's going to be at the whittling the wooden ball underneath those desks.
Yeah.
When he gets out, there's a fierceness, independence, recognition of what he is and what he isn't. And it's not as if they have no capacity. In some ways, they're far more gifted in
right.
I think of brother-in-law, who's one of the more brilliant mechanics, and he can do anything. He can do absolutely. His mind for puzzles and mechanical solutions is incredible. When he saw me do a speaking thing once, he was like, and so it's not as if our mantras of like, oh, everybody's good at something have no truth in them, right? And it is worthwhile remembering Lewis is writing as an academic with regard to the academy, because the sort of highly achieving academic students are the ones who are going to go on and lead society. From
so
the solutions that he's talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The envy at the heart of all this, practically, contextually here at least in America, it plays itself out not primarily, from my experience, correct me if I'm wrong, not primarily within the heart of the student, but within the heart of the parent. The parents, in large part, want their children to succeed, rightfully so. But when a child can't succeed for maybe a lack of capacity or even a lack of want, then the standards get equalized, if you will. Now, this is really ironic because this is seeped into sports as well, into athletics, where it's really obvious when athletes aren't equal, right? I think many schools around the area, at least the last few that I've been at, like there's no trying out for the team. Whenever I was in middle school, if you wanted to try out for the basketball team, you had to try out, and you either made the cut because you were good enough or you didn't. But now it's like everybody gets a shot, which just means you're on the team, but the actual gifted players are the ones playing, and you don't get to play.
Yeah. And how often are the dad and the mom jumping into the excuse making of the kid who didn't make the team? Right? It's like, yeah, you're right. So like, there's favoritism going on, and that's the only reason why you sat this year, or that's the reason why you didn't make the cut. Rather than sort of, son, you're not qualified to start on that team. You're not even working for it. Right? Like, apart from that guy's got more height than you, more speed than you, and he's got a soft touch with the basketball. Like, you haven't run a mile since you started playing. Right? That's sort of like teaching our kids to like be frank about who they are to start and what they've done with it, in order that they not turn failure into excuses.
And it's humbling. It's humbling from the perspective of a father and mother too, because naturally, like you envision a life for your kids, and whenever they don't, or just can't, or don't want to step into whatever gifting you envision for them, it's like, from my perspective, it's like, well, okay, Like you're not cut out for what I hoped you would be cut out for. And how to shepherd children through that in a gentle but transparent and honest, forthright way is.
And that's just pure selfishness, right? Like that's just like you had ungodly ambitions, and you wanted to make your children in the image of maybe not even you, but who you want your children to be. Maybe for reasons, right? And so like the flip side is a sort of studying of your children, learning who is this kid, like what is it made for, and then recognizing what that kid can get and cannot get out of the education you should give them, right? And guarding them against being ruled by envy if they're at the back of the class, just like you should do some shepherding to make sure that if they're at the front of the class, they're not ruled by pride, right? And then counseling them towards the place where they actually fit well. Like this kid is made to well. This kid is. I got a brother who I just think was made to. Like he has the management capacity. He has an obsession with it. He's always thinking about. He's always getting. He's always thinking about what do I need to do. And he's like way attitude and desire for that sort of thing. And so like God's given him that gift, and he would be ill-placed.
But there's a balance too. I think it would be an error if we just kind of sat back and like let our children like, oh, what are they going to do? What are they going to grow into without like putting some parameters? For example, practically, we want our children to play piano and to persist in that. My oldest son is really thriving, just taking off. My daughter, if we stopped her, she'd be totally fine with it. But it's like we're going to press on that because we find it valuable, like for many different reasons. So we're pressing it. She might not be as gifted. She might be a C+ piano player, but we're going to keep her and press at it. And I don't think that is I don't think that is sinfully trying to form her into an artificial, self-made image. So there is a tango that you have to be aware of.
Exercise. I think in the case of your daughter, you would want to keep it diminishing returns. If she's got C+ gifting in piano, should she play piano through high school? Right? Like piano is not like a core education thing. Like, could you give her something else that?
Unless it is.
Right. Pardon?
I said unless it is a core educational piece.
I think.
Or music major, like.
that musician is a core educational.
Music literacy.
It could be, and music generally is. But I think instrumentalist would be.
That's fair. Like when to if you've pressed your child, and the child isn't thriving, but is persisting at a sort of kind of maybe at the bottom, let's say a C+ range, C- range, it could be a good time to cut them off at some point.
Yeah. I mean, there are lessons to be learned in slogging through something you don't like.
Yeah, I think it requires wisdom to discern some of that. But it's good to be aware that sometimes it's the parent's desires over and above the child's desires, and the envy. My goodness, reading both of these pieces, and in light of abolition of man, it is a little depressing as I step back and survey the landscape.
Yeah, once again, Lewis managed to call it but not stop it.
Yeah. Come on. Yeah. So it does kind of leave you wondering, like, what could we do? We certainly pray, certainly faithfully parent our children, and seek, seek to do some good for the next generation in that way. But do you have any other ideas?
I wouldn't undersell those things, but I think also working to choose to take part in and unapologetically promote a church that is willing to sort of be no nonsense about that sort of thing. I think in light of this conversation, the egalitarian question about like women preaching, like women up front, like I understand that's probably not a hornet's nest that Christ in Classics wants to hit. What if you but like you begin to understand like a church that just is able to say, you're not made for that, right? Stop chasing something you're not made for, right? And to say that in obedience to Scripture, I think is a important step towards a culture of people who are gladly submissive to whatever God has made them for, on an individual basis in relation to their sex, in relation to their station in life. A pulpit that it is under no illusions that everyone is equal is a gift to the community.
Yeah, amen. And a pastor or a team of pastors who can artfully place congregants in places where they thrive individually to bless others.
I think another way, Devin, is to not just mistake it as like, well, we need to teach our kids to have like the humility to recognize how they've been made. But I'll read a passage if I can find it quick that shows there's something bigger here than just humility. Equality is purely a social conception. It applies to man as a political and economic animal. It has no place in the world of the mind. Beauty, there's one of the triad, is not democratic. She reveals herself more to the few than to the many, more to the persistent and disciplined seekers than to the careless. Virtue, that'd be goodness, is not democratic. She is achieved by those who pursue her more hotly than most men. Truth is not democratic. She demands special talents and special industry in those to whom she gives her favors. Political democracy is doomed if it tries to extend its demand for equality into these higher spheres. Ethical, there's goodness again. Intellectual, there's truth. Or aesthetic democracy is death. So I would say, like, cultivate taste for excellence in goodness, truth, and beauty in your kids. Right? Like, if your family has Twinkies Saturday night and that's like your thing, right? Like, get a better thing. Right? Like, like, as they get older, care about their tastes. Give them better things. Like, teach them that. And have conversations. I remember getting in a fight with my sister about whether or not bananas were good in smoothies.
Did you say yay or nay?
Pardon?
Did you say yay or nay?
Of course they are. Bananas are absolutely good in smoothies. Objectively.
They're the bedrock of a smoothie.
So like they're objectively good in smoothies. Right? And so it's like, well, but I don't like smoothies. So that does not change the fact that bananas are good in smoothies. And we were able to get into a conversation that, like, caviar, I may not have a taste for it. That doesn't mean it's not like excellent, right?
Yeah.
And I also don't have a pocketbook for it. That doesn't mean it's excellent. So,
right.
So in truth, in goodness, and beauty, and music is a big one. Like, if I hate kids' books in large measure, just like I hate kids' music in large measure.
But you don't hate kids.
I love kids. I got the most beautiful. I mean,
they are beautiful.
I'm an objectivist, right? You know that I'm willing to say if one of them's not beautiful. And I've got beautiful kids in the freaking world. So, But you know, kids music is like, oh, this is the worst. Like, I don't want my kids to have this stuck in their head for the rest of their life. It's pandering and gross and just like marshmallow feeling. Yeah. And
On a merry-go-round.
I've learned that my son can listen to songs put to classical, like arranged in, you know, like form music. Music, I don't even know, like, I don't even have language to like explain. He knows songs and can say them, sing them.
Wow.
Yeah. So try to have your kids grow up with better taste than you, and care about your own taste, right? Like, work on, you know, making better kombucha. Non-alcoholic beer.
I've got some kombucha right here. Kombucha right here. That's right. Better shows too. Better TV. If you're going to watch TV, you better be watching this one right here. The best Disney movie of all time, Robin Hood. It's like 1960 something. That's good taste right there.
Maybe it is. It is the best.
It's the best one.
Bananas are good in smoothies and stuff. It's just Disney.
Oh, is that you, Devin?
Yeah.
Ah, so good. So good.
Ever have to listen to any hold music besides whistle step? Whistle step. That's what it should be. It should become federal standard. If you're on hold, you get to listen to whistle step.
That's true. That's true.
Guys, the big takeaway that I have right now personally within my mind is that it's okay, and it's good. It's rather good, appropriate, and good to be and to feel inferior at many points throughout our lives. And we didn't talk about this, but it's good and appropriate to be and feel superior in other aspects of our lives. But it's never okay to be envious of those who are superior. And I'm not sure if Lewis said it in his essays, but it's also never appropriate to be arrogant and pridefully puffed up with your superiority. So that, like, practically for me, this works itself out. It's like you can say things like, "Yeah, I'm good at that." I feel like in a lot of our circles, you say something like, "You know, I'm pretty good at trumpet. I know Greek pretty well."
Yeah. Also,
and then folks are like, "Whoa, you need to just check yourself. You need to watch. You need to check your heart. Are you prideful right now?" It's like, I don't know. Yeah. I don't think so.
Yeah, you know, we always have to like do this sort of false humility where I pitch a little bit, and then you like go out. It turns out I was scouted by the Washington Nationals, and he has a fastball. You know, it would be better to say, "Yeah, I pitch. I'm pretty good."
Yeah. Or in Keith's context, I've probably milked a couple cows in my life. I've thrown a couple bales of alfalfa while flexing a Lewis novel.
Bales of hay. You don't throw bales of Your question is the one that's been in my mind before our meeting even. It's like, where do we go from here? How do we combat in our families, in our hearts, in our lives, in our churches? Deep sensibilities that hate and reject all sense of inequality, superiority. To deal with the trauma of feeling inferior. I think one of the ways is to just be excellent at what I do.
Yeah.
Actually, excel. which is convicting for me because I kind of feel like I've got a bunch of things that but just loving the world, loving your family. If you're into kombucha, just like make it so that every time somebody tastes your kombucha, they are talking about the superior, right? Not inferior, not equal, the superior kombucha of Texas, right? And I, I think going, living sort of hard after that and not being abashed about really dedicating yourself to that in culture.
Yeah, I was thinking along those lines as well. Like, do everything that you can, that you put your hand to the best of your ability, right? And seek to grow. That may not be superior to everyone else's efforts, but seems like the hard work pays dividends, and in and across other disciplines as well. And I guess the sameness that's expected across, it doesn't really matter what you're talking about. If it's academics, the sameness that's expected across the board is just not the way it ought to be. There's a beauty in diversity, and we bring different. I mean, even in our cohort when we were all together, we all had different strengths, and if we're comfortable in that and we pursue those strengths, I think we're probably the better for it.
Yeah. I mean, one of the ways I think a culture that's sold out to envy and to egalitarianism. Lewis talks about the wheat heads, where the ancient Greek monarch or dictator, his object lesson with how to keep a people in subjugation was to snick off the heads of any wheat heads that rose above their peers. And Lewis says, and now our wheat stalks are snicking off their own heads in order to just be another stalk. I think that's a code for a lack of ambition. Right? Sort of like if you said you're going to plant a church, Devin, it's like, why? And you're like, I think I really want to see this done well and this done well and this done well. And they said, you just think you can do that better than everyone else. Right? Right? It's like, oh, shoot, I don't want to. Superior. No, you want to have ambition to be the best, most committed, pastor, whatever you're doing, or if coffee shop, you shouldn't want to be just another coffee shop. Be the best one in the area. Have enough ambition to beat out the competition. Really being hard enough and ambitious enough to pursue superiority is it's correlative to the whole conversation that we're having. It's a way to not sink your own head off preemptively.
Yeah.
And the only issue that would arise then is a matter of the heart, whether or not it's your motives going into it. Because it's not. I'll be willing to wager that the pure pastor isn't wanting to plant a church mainly to draw attention to himself, but to meet a need, or the local coffee shop owner isn't doing it just to gain fame. He's probably doing it to make an income. So he wants to be good to have customers to come back to make an income, but also to just enjoy the craft of
he loves coffee.
Making great coffee. Yeah, and that's admirable in itself. And the flip side is knowing when to not pursue such an avenue when you're not qualified or gifted for that.
Yeah.
And being okay with it. and celebrating others' superiority in that.
Right. Yeah. Oh man, it's fun talking to you guys. We should.
I was gonna say I love talking to you, Keith.
Yeah, once a month.
I love talking to you, Keith.
Colton can say he's publishing it, but Colton, you can just crumple them up and throw them away. Yeah.
Well, I don't know about that. Whenever you speak, it's like gold coming out, right? So
You've always been good on your feet. Really good.
Yeah. Like you mentioned to me one time over the phone, and you hit it spot on. You said something like, "Well, whenever we were in seminary, I was particularly I wasn't the best at like generating outstanding essays and papers, but whenever somebody presented theirs, I sure was good at sharpening their ideas for them." You said something like that, and I thought Keith's the kind of guy you want around whenever you're thinking through a topic, because he's gonna sharpen you really well. And just the guy to have you around in general. So I've been real delighted to have you on.
Been a blessing to my wife over the years too. It's just
Sure.
The inability to generate sort of a vision or something just out of my own head, but the real ability to critique is.
Yeah, the Lord have mercy.
Well, speaking of that, you guys hear that?
No.
You'll hear it. You're about to hear it.
That a little rock and roll.
Yeah, that's Micah. All right.
Interested in growing your ancient language skills but not sure where to start? Glossa House can help. From illustrated readers and short stories to lexicons and grammars, Glossa House offers a variety of resources for beginning, intermediate, and experienced ancient language learners. Head to glossahouse.com today. Glossa House, language resources for the global community.